My husband and I were having a conversation the other day about what we did during the summer when we were out of school. He told me about how he worked at Woolworth, and then I told him my story. He said, you should do a video about that. So we're going down memory lane. Welcome back. This is Cindy, your Sassy Southern Grandma, and we're going to go down memory lane today, talking about what did we do in the summer. I'm 64, so we're talking many, many moons ago. I hate to think how many years I've been out of high school, but I was raised in a very small town. I guess you could call it a town. It's called a city, the city of Pink Hill, North Carolina, but it's teeny tiny. We've talked about it here before. And the only thing to do in the summertime, if you wanted to make any money, was to work in tobacco, which back then was called backer. We worked in backer.
American tobacco, that.
You won't hear as much of my southern accent as now as you would have back then, but I'll give you some clues along the way. What we did was we went to the tobacco fields, took the tobacco, put it in the barn. It was cured in the barn, and then it went to market. I did not know a lot of nationally what was going on during that time, but there were massive tobacco subsidies. This was not long after some of the medical things had come out about how cigarettes are bad for you, but it had not really spread to the point that it is now, that you can't advertise cigarettes on television and that sort of thing. Cigarettes were everywhere. Everybody smoked, just about everybody. My father smoked. Almost every man I knew smoked. It was just, that was a thing people did. And if you see older shows like Mad Men that depict prior times, you'll see that people smoked all the time. I have an uncle that we do not have a picture of him without a cigarette in his hand. I don't remember ever seeing him without a cigarette in his hand. But tobacco was the money crop. And even if people didn't smoke, which my boss man did not smoke, the man that I worked for did not smoke, but that was the money crop. It was tobacco, soybeans, and corn. And tobacco was king in eastern North Carolina. So that was the only thing to do during the summer. I worked for a really wonderful man and his wife. They were tobacco farmers. He had some other crops too, but he was primarily tobacco. And he would go around and pick us up on the pickup truck every morning, Monday through Friday, sometimes on Saturday, and pick us up around 6. We'd be in the field just as the sun was coming up, and we would work until almost the sun went down. We'd work till about dinner time. So it was a hard job. It was hard. It was working in wet tobacco in the morning because it was covered in dew, and then you dry off, and then it's 90-something degrees, and you're working in that for several hours. And then in the afternoon, eastern North Carolina a lot of times gets a rain shower in the afternoon, so then we would get wet all over again because we continued working, and then dry off again before dinner time. So pleasant? No, but we kind of made it fun. There were, back then, it was kind of the middle of tobacco cropping technology, tobacco harvesting technology, because prior to the way that we did it, people just did it by hand, on foot. People would go into the field on foot, take the tobacco leaves off, take it to the barn, put it on sticks, put it in the barn, blah, blah, blah. When after us came automatic croppers, where it was just a machine that went through and got the leaves. But our era, when I was 12, 13, when we started working in tobacco in the summer, my sister and I, and then my brother after he got older would drive the tractor. My sister and I worked with this one farmer for our entire high school years, junior high and high school years, every summer, all summer. We would work for, it was, I would say around a couple of dollars an hour. It wasn't much more than that. If it was, I can't remember exactly, but it was nowhere near, there was no minimum wage then. It was just, you got paid what you got paid. So we didn't think it unusual because that was all there was to do. And the reason that we went to work in the summer was because we had to buy our school clothes. And I used that money to buy my school clothes, to buy, I'm sure some of that money went to my first car. Some of that money went to my yearbooks, my class ring, graduation costs, all those things that while we didn't pay bills at home, our parents were okay enough financially to do that. But we did help out by paying for some of our own personal stuff. The type of harvester that we used, actually the people were the harvesters, but it was a contraption that on the bottom had 4 seats. We did 4 rows of tobacco at a time, 4 seats on the bottom. Then there was a second level where we stood, where we put the tobacco on sticks. I'll try to add in some B-roll here with some things to kind of give you a visual. I'm a visual person, kind of give you a visual of what that looked like. But we would go from one end of the road to the other. At the end of the road, we would take the pile of tobacco that we had put on sticks. It would go down onto a trailer. We'd get a clean pallet and we'd start back up the next road. It was a whole routine all day. We would get up in the morning, go early, get started, get wet, get dry, and then the boss's father, who was at that time should have been probably in his 70s, would bring us snacks. That was a highlight of the morning and mid-morning and mid-afternoon was snacks. And he brought us Pepsis and Mountain Dews and RC Colas and moon pies and honey buns and all sorts of little individual snacks so we could have a little break in the morning. He would meet us at the end of a road. We'd sit down on the harvester, have our little snack. That's where I fell in love with Pepsi Cola. I drink Diet Dr. Pepper now, but back then Pepsi Cola was my beverage because we never kept any sodas at home. And we always had sweet iced tea, water, milk. That was it. We didn't have, never had sodas at home. So getting to drink a Pepsi in the morning and a Pepsi in the afternoon was a treat to me. And then during the day, we also had one of those huge igloo coolers with the spout at the bottom with cold water in it. So they provided for us well as far as people who worked in fields. And no, there were no bathrooms. There was no porta potty. We went a few rows over and did what we had to do and came back. I mostly held it till lunchtime because I wasn't real fond of, there were snakes, there were bugs, there were worms, there were no toilet paper. So that was not one of my favorite things about it. But it was not unusual to us. When I look back at it now, I think I would not ever expect my 13-year-old to go work in a field all day. But that was our economy. That was the way we worked. There were no fast food places. There was a little tiny grocery store. Very few people to work there. There was nowhere else for us to work. So if we wanted to make any money in the summertime, that was what we did. We worked Monday through Friday, sun up to sundown, and then on Saturdays, sometimes towards the end of the harvesting season when the tobacco was cured and started coming out of the barns, we'd sometimes work on Saturdays to get that tobacco out of the barn so it could get ready to go to market. I won't go through the whole step-by-step process, but it was exhausting. Our parents didn't have to worry about us running the streets or getting in any kind of trouble. Not that there was any trouble to get in that little town out in the country, but we were tired. We were tired every night. When we came home, there was nothing but eat, watch a little TV, and go to bed. Oh, and take a shower, because we were filthy. We were filthy. If you have never handled fresh tobacco leaves, there is tobacco gum. It's a sticky substance all over the outside of it. So when you grab those bundles of leaves, it coats your hands with this sticky, gluey stuff all day long. So it's a lot of scrubbing at night to get all that stuff off. But I said we made it fun. We were able to, I made some good friends, some friends that I still remember to this day, their personalities and little things about their lives that other people have kind of fallen out of my memory, but these people stick out because we would spend 3 months a year with them out in the field. And there was nothing to do but try and make it fun. Us girls would sing. There was always 4 or 5 women at the top, 5 girls at the top. And we would sing, we would tell jokes, we would do all sorts of things. The guys, usually it was guys on the bottom that were taking the leaves off of the plants, and they kind of played jokes on each other more than anything. We always had one guy who would follow behind the harvester and pick up any leaves that got lost because Our boss man was not losing a penny. He was not going to leave one leaf out in that field that could be put in a bundle. So we always had one guy. It was usually the youngest person would go behind and pick up the leaves, and they play jokes on him all the time and send him to the barn to get something that doesn't exist, or have him run back down the road and said, Barbara lost her marbles, go back there and find her marbles. And he'd run back there like it was kind of bullying now that I look at it, but it was their way of passing the time. And it kind of made him feel like part of the gang, I think, because he was younger, and so he was kind of getting in with the crowd because they were playing jokes on him. And should you think there were labor laws or anything? Apparently not. Everybody in that area, eastern North Carolina, that was it in the summer. It was burning tobacco. And hazardous, yes, very hazardous. It is really a wonder there weren't more injuries than there were. But, I mean, of course, we'd get splinters from, I don't know if you've seen those wooden tobacco sticks. Now they sell them in boutiques as some kind of antique treasure. When I saw them in a secondhand shop, tobacco sticks in a barrel for sale, I was stunned. It brought me back so far back in my memory, and then I thought, what are people doing with tobacco sticks? I had to take a picture and send it to my sister, because to think that people are now profiting off of old tobacco sticks. But there were some injuries. I mean, we'd get splinters, we'd get, all kinds of bumps and bruises and scratches, and it was hard work. And then in the barn, the guys who worked up in the top of the barn would have to straddle these tier poles, put 1 foot here, 1 foot here, and then reach down and get the tobacco stick to poke it up into the barn and get it hanging in the barn. So it really is a wonder that we didn't have more accidents or more problems than we did. The one big thing that happened in all the years that we took barn tobacco was my sister was working at the barn. I was working on the harvester. And she rode in to the field, from the barn to the field, on the trailer that held the flat, the empty flat that they were going to replace our full flat with at the end of the road. So my sister was there early morning. She was kind of laying sideways on the trailer, and it was bumping over the little country roads to get to the field, and hit a bump. She went up and came down on the ground. Actually on the pavement. Her face hit the pavement. They were crossing a road. Her face and shoulder hit the pavement, and the trailer went over her. It was an empty trailer. It was a wooden trailer, which is very good for her. She had no broken bones. She had some strain in her neck and had to wear a neck brace. All the skin was off this side of her face. All the skin was off of her shoulder. And in true small town fashion, this happened in the morning. I went with her to the hospital. My boss, we put her in the truck, went straight to the volunteer fire department. We didn't call 911. We were out in a field in the country. We went to the fire department in Pink Hill. He hit the red button on the side. The sirens went off. All the volunteer fire department and EMS people came in. They got her in an ambulance, and I rode in the front and went to the hospital and got her taken care of. She wasn't even admitted. They just did some x-rays, patched her up best they could, put the neck brace on her, and sent her home with a recommendation to follow up with the doctor. By the end of the afternoon, there were people calling my mother non-stop. They had heard, the story had grown from Mandy fell off and hurt her face and shoulder and has a neck brace, to she's in intensive care. They don't know if she's going to make it. Is there anything we can do? How is she doing? How long is she going to be in the hospital? The story had blown to monumental proportions, and she was sitting there in the living room watching TV. So that gives you a little glimpse into small towns, how things can get. It's like that little game you used to play, gossip, when you whisper something in somebody's ear and they whisper it in the next one, and by the time it gets to the end, it's not anything like the first thing. That's exactly what happens with everything. So she was kind of a little celebrity in a little town there for a while, and she had to be out of work for a while, but she recovered. That was towards the end of the season, so I don't think she came back to work the rest of that season. But she's fine now. All of her skin came back just fine. We really thought, as bad as it was, we really thought that her face was going to be somewhat scarred, because it was really the whole top layer of her skin was gone, and gravel and, you know, road rash. But both of those places healed up fine. You can't even tell it now. So that was scary, but it really was the only major type of accident that went on in all those years. I worked there. We worked with him from middle school, junior high. I was 12 or 13 that first summer, so she would have been 11. And we worked all the way through our high school years, every summer. The people that we worked for were wonderful people. They were just probably the nicest people you ever want to meet. The boss just recently passed away in January. He was 83, and his wife is still alive. She actually came to the visitation at my father's funeral when I was there in December. It was wonderful to see her again. And she cooked a lunch for us. There were probably 15 to 20 of us on the crew every day. In their garage, they had a 2-car garage, and they had a table that went all the way down the middle, just your regular long tables, fold-up tables, went all the way down the middle of the garage. We sat on all the sides, and we had a spread every day. She spent all morning cooking 3, 4, 5 entrees, meat, vegetables, good country cooking, the most wonderful food. If you could ever get that in a restaurant, it would be gangbusters. But every day she got up, he took us to work, we started working, she got up, and she had 2 small kids at the time. So she worked pretty much as hard as we did. She was in the kitchen all day, cooking in just a regular kitchen for 15 or 20 people every single day. And that, with the snacks and drinks and water and all the things, they were very attentive to us. We were never treated badly. We were never treated like we were not just regular people that they knew. They were always kind to us. And I guess that's what made it seem not so horrible at the time. To think about it now, it doesn't seem right for children to be doing that, but that was the way it was. And like I said, we made good times out of it. We made good friends out of it. And every year, our boss would take us on some kind of trip. We'd go to Six Flags. We'd go to Black Mountain in the mountains of North Carolina. Different places we went every summer. He would take us on a trip at the end of the summer. So it was a real bonding time for all of us. And there'd be different people on the crew from summer to summer, but some of us were there pretty much almost every year. So there was another set of sisters, Benita and Doris, that worked with us. So we were close to them, and then other people that just went in and out from summer to summer. But to us, it was a happy time. We didn't like the work, but it was like understood, you're going to work in the summer. I don't remember our parents ever sitting us down and saying, if you want school clothes, you've got to go to work. Or if you want to have a yearbook or a class ring or any of those extras, you've got to go to work in the summer. I just grew up understanding that's what we were going to do. So I would have to ask my sister, see if she remembers having any conversations about it. I don't remember any conversations other than Lewis is picking you up in the morning. One good benefit of working in a field as a child is when you have your own children. When you have your own children and they get a job in, let's say McDonald's or Taco Bell or some air-conditioned building with a soda fountain in there, with food right in front of you, with a boss that's probably not much older than you are, with part-time hours, and they complain. I had stories. They got so tired. Okay, Mom, we already know about working in tobacco. You don't have to tell us anymore. One time I took them to pick green beans. A friend of ours had a garden, and she had a plethora of green beans, and she said we could come pick some if we wanted them. I was like, sure. And so I took the kids, and you never heard so much. It's hot. How long do we have to do this? What are we going to do? How do we have to do this? I thought it would be a fun experience. You know, people take their kids strawberry picking and blueberry picking, and no, it was torture. It was terrible. It was horrible. And boy, did they get some tobacco stories from me that day. we're out there 5 minutes and they're dying. So, yeah, they got plenty of tobacco burning stories, and they came to appreciate that, you know, it could be worse. And if they forgot that, I reminded them. I'd love to hear your stories about what you did in the summertime. My husband, he worked at Woolco. He's from New York. I can't say it. I don't have the accent. But he's from Long Island. He did not have to work in a field. He worked in an air-conditioned building, which is how this whole video came about, because we were talking about it. He said, you need to tell people about that story. I'd love to hear from you if you are especially from the South. What did you do in the summertime? And if you're not, what did you do in the summertime when you were growing up? Did you have to have a job? Did you want to have a job? How did that work out for you? Give me some feedback in the comments. And I'll see you again next week.
I'll come back now. Here.